All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do have our Alliance Tournament 10 finalists. Unreloaded winners of Alliance Tournament 4 versus Verge of Collapse. I am certain that's going to be a wonderful and exciting tournament final. Unreloaded, of course, who I had winning the final when we started this morning, and of course when they went up against PL, I quickly scribbled their name out, and now I'm a little bit ashamed that I've gotten off the bandwagon.
You can't change your bracket.
That's true.
It's just bad karma.
All right, well, let's say that's not allowed, so I still have Unreloaded to win this thing. All right, so we've swapped out Hilmar with CCP Unifex. How are you two doing today?
Good. Good. It was really good watching that last game, actually. We were all getting quite excited in the studio with the hero tanking Kronos. That was,
and it's not the first time today even that we've seen really low structure tanking ships saving the day. That was close. I was biting my nails. I was probably having a laugh, really.
All right, so quick introduction from you.
Yeah, I'm CCP Unifex, John Lander. I'm the senior producer of EVE Online. So I have the great job, actually, of just looking after all of EVE and making sure that it goes in the right direction and we do the right thing. So.
All right.
It's great to be here. It's great to sort of see you. Yeah, absolutely. You can shout at me.
Well, you can tell him, and then he shouts at me.
Oh, even better.
That's kind of the chain of it. All right, so we saw Verge come in with Chronoses, Exodus with Vindicators, Chronos, and a Damnation as kind of the primary big ships. So we're talking about War God a little bit. We had what looked like a remote repping mishap. What exactly happened?
So that match was actually interesting from the very first moment. So when they warped in, it became like a sort of game of chicken, where both teams were tanking pretty well, but they just had so much blaster damage and were right on top of each other, and their Oniroses were pretty safe behind with support protection, that somebody had to go for someone's Oniros. And the second that you went for it, they knew that that team was going to web you and make it the most grueling attempt to go for an Oniros that you could ever experience. So both teams just sort of decided to duke it out, and back and forth, sort of just tipped as they traded DPS. And then finally they were breaking one of the Chronos, and it was obvious in comms, like, my Chronos is going down, reps on the Chronos, and then War God put them on the wrong pilot. So he almost certainly had both of those watch listed, and when he went up, and probably pre-rocked, and when he went up to click on the ship, he just clicked on the picture of the Chronos and didn't read the name fully, and didn't match between his watch list and the name at the top of his targets, and repped the wrong Chronos, almost causing the other Chronos to die instantly. But he just barely ended his one cycle, started the other cycle, and the cycle finished landing the reps just barely in time.
Such an agonizing few seconds waiting for that cycle to finish so you could switch reps.
I believe it's like a full 5 or 10 seconds, something like 10 seconds, 5 seconds a cycle. It's for it to go all the way around once after he puts it on the wrong system.
All the way around
then it goes around again and activates, and finally, after 2 full cycles, the reps land.
I'm actually kind of curious to know just the number of structure hit points he had left, because it looked from here like he had nothing at all. So love your Logi pilots, guys. They do not get enough credit. That is by far the hardest role to have.
And like we saw now, they can potentially lose you the game.
Yeah.
And actually, another interesting thing to note, that while that was happening, initially I would almost guarantee that the Oniros was overheating its reps as hard as he could. And then the frigates for the opposing team were dropped down, just giving that little bit of DPS decrease, so that he could then not be overheating his reps, and they still held. He couldn't have just kept his reps overheating. They had to decrease that DPS so quickly so that he could then take his reps off overheat.
While we were all focusing on the hit point bar of that Kronos to see if he was going to die or not, the frigates were having their own little war in the background. They started knocking off the curses left and right, and that was kind of the turning point where it switched back to the
strength of the assault frigates over just the regular 2-1 frigates and the curses.
Yeah, and Ishkurs have been my favorite Alliance Tournament frigate for quite a while. They're great. They have drones. They have good utility. They actually produce a bit of DPS as well. So
more than a bit.
More than a bit. yeah. Yep. And we saw them here, and they were going for what looked like the Kronos, right? There was a while where they were all taking the same amount of damage. Was kind of pointing towards them being in smart bomb range of one of those big ships.
Yep. It's hard to see without the clients. Obviously, we're here in the studio, but I would suspect that when you see spread damage like that, that's almost certainly from an area effect weapon like the smart bomb. But that DPS was crucial in overcoming that Oniros at that point.
Yes.
Like, if they hadn't traded effectively then, so that you had the one ship in the low structure, and the only reason losing that ship was okay because they traded for a Kronos on the other team, And if that trade had been even a little bit delayed, the decreased DPS from losing that Chronos would have allowed it to rep back up.
It's just one more example in this Alliance tournament of how the frigate battle has decided the larger battle as a whole.
Which has been pretty amazing. So, Virtue Collapse making their way into the finals, now facing Hun Reloaded, who will probably just bring the same thing again.
That's been working for him so far. And
I would love if they bring
one
something crazy.
the one setup we thought that was going to be a hard counter to him, they just powered on through. They were like, F the police, we're just going straight forward with it. If they were going to bring a different setup, now's the time to do it, because everybody's seen him do it. They've all had a chance to theory craft, see what can beat this Varger team. Maybe Verge has it, maybe they don't.
But I mean, on the other hand, when PL gets to tailor a setup that can beat you, and you beat them, then you might just be at the point where you just don't really care.
Arguably the best theory crafters in the game, still didn't beat your setup. So I don't know, maybe.
I'd just bring the same setup.
Wouldn't it be amazing, though, if the Vargas was their second best setup and they've been bringing it the whole time? They're like, well, both of them are so good. Well, we'll just save the best one for last.
We have been saying the Hun's been bringing the Vargas all the time, but I think it was the end of the group stages they brought an ECM team. So they do have another setup in the wings somewhere, at least one.
All right, so while we have CCP Unifex here, we have a few things coming out this winter. When is our next release?
So we've got a point release coming out in a few weeks. So it'll be around the middle of, just before the middle of August. We've got a few, small good pieces in there. So we've got some changes to our MPE. So one of the things we're trying to do is just make EVE a little bit easier on people when they first come into the game. Not necessarily by making the game easier, but just making it easier to learn it. Make it presenting the information better, making sure that it's just a little bit more intuitive rather than being really thrown in completely at the deep end. So we've had a team who've made some really, really good strides on that. So we're putting some fixes on that. And that'll be good because it's really important for EVE that we continue to get more players in. We've been going for 9.5 years now. We've got, you can see on the Alliance teams, we've got a lot of really good veterans who are in there. We constantly get in a lot of new players, but we want more of them to stick around. So so that's we're hoping to see some really good changes from that. We've got various balancing changes. We're looking at balancing some of the ships. We're looking at the Technetium problem.
Yes.
Which we've just been blogging about.
Well, it's a
feature. It's a feature which needs some work on.
Iteration.
So we're iteration.
I think it's working great for us.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. So we're going to be making some changes on that, and I know that the guys working on that have been looking at all the feedback and they've been running all the numbers. So that's going. We've got some more ship v3, so we've got some more good visuals going out on some of the pirate factions. And a load of, as usual, we have sort of lots of little things that go in there as well. So that's coming out in the next few weeks, and then as we go forward through the next part of 2012, we've got a small matter of this first-person shooter coming into the game, and affecting the world, which
just
will be a little matter, a small thing, which is I think is going to have a huge impact on the whole EVE universe. I think it's going to be an incredibly meaningful moment. And then, we're sort of locking down release plans right now for our winter expansion. So we're looking at what it is we're going to be doing, what sort of things we want to be pushing out there. We had a really good session with the CSM back in, I think it was June. Seems like yesterday, but where we sort of went through a whole load of things. And it's looking good. It's looking like we're getting to a point where we're going to be able to put out a really nice release in winter, which I think should hopefully push a lot of people's buttons in the right way.
So you said 9.5 years. We have our 10-year anniversary coming next year.
Yeah.
It's going to be a heck of a fan fest.
It's going to be one heck of a fan fest.
You're part of that.
Yeah.
So what are we thinking 10th anniversary? What are we going to do for a crazy year?
That's difficult because we do so many crazy things.
It's a long time for an MMO. How many MMOs don't even make it a year? 10 years.
And growing.
And grow. And we've grown our subscriber numbers year on year on year. We haven't had that kind of crazy spike in the first 3 months and then a long, slow, painful death to sort of free to play and misery. So
one of the only MMOs to have that kind of chart where it's always going up.
Absolutely. And I think it says an awful lot for the players that the people I met at FanFest this year, we're already thinking ahead to this moment, and we've got the great new venue. We're going to have a whole load of additional people kind of in this world who are going to be looking at EVE to sort of really put a marker down for these games are around for a long time. CCP doesn't make games that last for a year or two. We want to make games that last for a long time. So what can we do on top of launching space balloons, and you know, I've had a couple of chats with some people who've been looking at taking that a step further at FanFest, and you know, just what features are we going to do for 10 years, and what kind of party are we going to do, and I mean, there's a lot of planning and preparation goes into it, and I don't want to spoil the surprise too
For
much.
those of you who haven't been to FanFest, I would highly recommend that you all start booking right now. The dates have already been published.
It's a heck of a party.
It is the ultimate party. I've done it for 2 years as my spring break from college. Out of control. Lots of Eve, lots of spaceships, lots of partying, lots of fun.
A weekend
maybe
at
the
Quebec
most
is
fun.
not like a weekend anywhere else. It's
Yeah.
a unique experience.
And this year was my first year as senior producer, and it was, I mean, no joke, it was 4 solid days of just geeking out about spaceships with people who kind of, they get to sort of come out of the closet and sort of say, I mean, I'm a spaceship fan, how about you? And in a bar, and someone says, yeah, me too. And then you spend hours just talking about this stuff, and it's just this
Well, the locals
wonderful,
look on
strange
abject
experience.
horror.
And yeah, I ended up at the end of the Saturday night, after the sort of the big party, and we've been doing presentations, and we've been doing, you know, just talking to the players who, you know, are the most committed players that we have out there. You know, they're the guys who make this effort to come out. And I was drained. I was completely exhausted at the end of it. But it was, you just kind of got this feeling of, wow, you know, there are people out there who do genuinely love what it is we're building. And it was just a wonderful experience, wonderful atmosphere. Everybody was just having one heck of a time. So yeah, come along.
So, 2 veteran players. Well, actually, Michael Bolton, you haven't played for that long, but you've certainly made up for it.
I'm a wee baby in comparison to many Eve players. I've only been playing for a little more than 2 years.
Yes, just about to say, when we had you as a commentator last year, you played for less than a year, I think.
Yep, just about slightly more than a year, I'll say. I made my first anniversary.
So, you know, after a year, diplomat for one of the biggest alliances in the game and a UTV commentator, Sastro, played for years, and you're now handing out medals.
Yes, that's have a gold star, little
Rising star in the EVE Online universe.
The director of medals. All right, so you're both veterans in very different ways. What would you do for 10 if you guys could pick what we did for our 10th year?
In terms of what, like game design decisions?
I mean, we've gone with war decks, we've gone to faction warfare, UI changes. If you guys could have your pick on what we did for the anniversary, what would you do?
All right, here's something that I think had a lot of potential, and everyone knows a ball was dropped on it. And that
Better
is
not say formations.
no, that was walking stations. That was Incarna. I thought Incarna had a good mechanic for getting the players together, forming more social bonds, doing things together, and obviously captain's quarters were a faceplant. They did not do enough. You didn't go far enough. And now I think everyone's kind of scared of walking in stations. They're scared of Incarna. They don't want to touch it because it was such a explosive disaster when it came out. Has everyone forgotten about that?
No, and I wouldn't say that people are scared of it. I think people are very concerned about leaving the core game behind, because it takes an awful lot of effort to build another game. You know, Hilmar was talking about it earlier, that, you know, we built a first-person shooter and we didn't want to do it in the EVE engine. You know, we used a different engine. So I don't think people are scared of it. I just think that we're aware of the mistakes that we made last year, and we don't want to repeat them. But yeah, we've had a team who've been doing some amazing work on just prototyping things out. What would make a really good game? What could we do with avatars, which actually is kind of everything that you want it to be? And we've got to look at the decisions. You know, we've got to look at, okay, so how many people will it take to do that? How much effort does it involve? Where does that effort come from? You know,
Well, it just seems like you got so close. You have the engine in the game, you got people's avatars are walking around, and it was like, and it just didn't quite get where we wanted it to get.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's that to get to do that cross that final hurdle. What do you actually need to get over there? And it's a whole different ball game having one character walking around to having many of them all in the same place.
I just want to look into someone's eye when you scam them.
I
And
know.
be like, peace out. And walk out of the station.
I'll double your is.
I want to walk backwards out of the station after I scam
that trade
someone.
window you have now, you want that to be face to face. You don't want just that little window and like accept and whatever. Yeah, and so what I really want to do is I want to make sure that we look at what gives us most bang for the buck on this, and what means that we don't have to stop doing, you know, making the progress we've made on the spaceship game so far. Because I just don't want us to stop the momentum we've built on that.
Clearly, and I think so far your spaceship mechanics have been doing great. I think the factional warfare changes have been going great. It's never been a better time to fly around in space.
I would say that if the thing that I want to see for the 10th anniversary is, I would love if at the end of the 10th anniversary year, you guys could say, we have gone through and everything that we felt really needed to be iterated on, We've fixed all the gameplay mechanics that people didn't like. We say we're done pauses, we're done faction warfare, we're done balancing, all this stuff. And I think that CCP was known for the huge flagship features that was like, this is the new shiny thing. I'd love to be able for you guys to say like, we're solid, we're happy with 100% how our setup is right now, and here is the new thing. And no matter what that is, as I feel as though as long as everything has been fixed, like iteration, the game is solid with everything that's currently in it, then that's the sort of thing players love. I think people didn't like the fact that those old big features were to the exclusion of fixing old ones.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the most broken thing right now?
I would say probably pauses.
Yeah.
And maybe tech.
I was so happy to hear Grayscale talk last weekend about doing the whole pause fixing, because that's something that's needed to be done for so
It's
long.
annoyed me in the game for so long.
Yeah.
It's just miserable. So yeah, I think
That'll
that'll
be
be.
huge. And I hope that gets iterated on. But once that's iterated on, I would say that my biggest aggravators in EVE have been band-aided. And then maybe you could do something big and explosive and cool.
My big run-in with pauses was moving to wormholes. Like, I mean,
Welcome to pauses. Use
I've
your wormhole.
never done logistics, never really touched them because I've always felt they were horrible, but moving to a wormhole and being forced to interact with them is just, it was painful. Like, I was ashamed. I sat at the office playing and I was like, I can't believe I made this shit.
This is your game, yeah.
There were two guys from a Wormhole Corporation. We had a player meet in Newcastle in the UK about a month ago. It was this crazy monsoon. A lot of people couldn't make it there, but there were these two guys who lived in a wormhole, and they bought me a beer and they sat down and they said, we're going to give you a really miserable 20 minutes now. And they talked about pauses in wormholes, and they just berated me about it. And then I let them know the changes that Grayscales is looking, and they just looked at it and went, thank you.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
I always forget about that because I don't live in wormholes, but wormholers are forced into pauses.
Yes.
There's no other way
Yes.
to do
Can't
it.
do it.
And they are awful.
Yes.
So my heart goes out to you wormholers.
And for the big alliances, every big alliances has that group of guys that are just like, oh, those guys, the guys that
I used
fuel
to
and
be
set
that
up
guy.
pauses. Well, obviously, but they're like the strange guys, like the horrible masochists that love that just like do pauses. Like, I don't want to ever touch that. I tried to set up a small tower once and I gave up when it was like anchoring time 5 hours or whatever it used to be.
Unsung heroes like Logipilots. I mean,
Yeah.
you need these people in your organisation. So.
All right. Well, I mean, if you really want us to do pauses, then luckily we're looking at them.
How about it?
What a coincidence! All right, we're going to be right back with more talk about spaceships, more talking with Unifex, and then of course the final. We do have a quick video to play for you guys while you wait. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, it's time. It's CCP Veritas with the Razor.
Say goodbye.